This is Scaredy Cat, written by Barrel Coops.
Scaredy Cat. Thomas was not like the other cats. His fur was a riot of color, a flickering tapestry of russet, gold, and copper, as if autumn itself had chosen him as its emissary. In the sunlight he shimmered. In the shade he glowed. People often stopped to watch him stroll along the garden wall, tail held high, coat catching the light like fire in motion. He belonged to a family who adored him. A warm bed, constant affection, treats slipped beneath the table, and hands that always knew where to scratch. It had been, for a time, a perfect life. But perfection never lasts. The house was marked for redevelopment. One by one, the neighbors vanished, their windows boarded, their gardens reclaimed by weeds. When the family received notice to relocate, they packed quickly. Thomas watched from the windowsill as the boxes multiplied, as familiar furniture disappeared. Then, one morning, the family left, and he did not go with them. They took him to a cat home. It smelled of bleach and strangers. The meows echoed off cold walls like cries in a tunnel. Food came on a schedule, not in familiar voices. He had no garden, no windowsill, no bed that smelled of his people. Just metal bars and the dull thud of doors opening and closing. Thomas waited for them to return. They didn't. One day, as a volunteer cleaned too slowly and propped open a door, Thomas slipped through. His heart pounded, paws silent on the tile, eyes wide with adrenaline. He ran. No plan. Just away. Big mistake. The world outside was no longer the one he remembered. His old street was half rubble, half ghost. Houses once full of life now sagged like tired old men. Doors hung loose on rusted hinges. The scent of other cats was everywhere. Territorial, unwelcome. Stray fur, scratched fences, scent-marked corners. Thomas, a stranger in his own land, quickly learned the rules. This is ours. You are not welcome. He fought. He lost. More than once. It wasn't until days later, bruised and thin, that he found it, home, or what was left of it. His house still stood, just. The windows were broken, curtains fluttering like ghosts. No one lived there now. No people, no noise, but no cats either. And, thank the stars, no dogs. He crept inside. The smell was faintly familiar, a trace of wood polish, a memory of toast, dust layered over time. He curled up in the corner of what used to be the living room, behind the tattered sofa, and slept. From that day on, the ruins became his kingdom. He learned to hunt. Rats nested in the skeletons of houses, mice darted through fractured walls, dustbins offered scraps, though he had to fight the crows for them. Every meal was earned, not given. His coat grew duller, his eyes sharper, he became leaner, wirier, stronger. But still, even now, Thomas was afraid of the dark, not of monsters or ghosts or other cats. No, he feared something closer, something always with him. His own shadow. At night, when the moon hung low and heavy, his shadow grew long and stretched across broken pavements. Sometimes it moved in ways he didn't. Sometimes it crept ahead of him, then behind. On windless nights, it would dance. He tried not to look, but he always looked. And when it loomed large on the wall of a burned-out house, jagged ears and twitching tail, Thomas would arch his back, hiss, and then realize with shame it was just him, again. But one night, it wouldn't be. The street looked like a war zone now, not just abandoned but ravaged. Windows stared out like sightless eyes. Some houses stood hollowed out, their insides gutted by fire. Walls scorched black and ceilings collapsed inward like broken ribs. Others had been vandalized. Bricks torn from facades, spray paint like angry scars. The road itself was cracked and potholed, twisted from the roots of trees long left untamed. Pavements were no longer pavements, just dirt tracks now, swallowed by weeds and heaped with the detritus of a life once lived. But Thomas didn't care. He was a cat, after all. And more than that, he was Thomas. King of the street, prince of pigeons, emperor of all that moved in the dark. And where others saw decay, he saw bounty. Rats loved the dark, the clutter, the crumbling walls. They nested beneath floorboards, behind ovens, in what used to be bedrooms. Rubble was not ruin. It was larder. That evening, the air hung thick and damp, and a light breeze drifted through the shattered window frames, carrying the scent of something sharp and musty. Thomas was on the prowl. His ears twitched. His whiskers bristled. His paws, near silent, patted across a fractured driveway as he tracked the scent of his next meal. Then he froze. A noise. Not a rat. Not quite. A scratch, deliberate, slow, from the other side of the street. Thomas crouched low to the ground, his ears swiveled forward. The sound came forward. The sound came again, louder this time, across timber, followed by a dull thump. Something falling. Rats didn't make noises like that. Not unless they were in trouble. And even then, they weren't that clumsy. The stories he'd overheard from humans of massive city rats gnawing through plaster and wire were just that, stories. Rats were quiet, efficient, shy. This wasn't a rat. His fur rose along his spine. The sensible part of him, the one shaped by cold nights and narrow escapes, whispered, "Don't go. Run. Pretend you never heard it." But there was another voice, quieter, older, a voice older than logic, older than fear. Curiosity. This was his street, his domain. No one had the right to prowl it in the dark without his knowing, not without answering for it. So he crossed the road. Glass cracked beneath his paw. He flinched, waited. But the night held its breath. The house across the way leaned sideways, as if bowing in surrender. Its roof sagged. The front door hung crooked, barely attached. The porch creaked as he stepped onto it. The air grew colder. He slipped inside. The hallway was dust-choked, the wallpaper peeling in long curls like old skin. A damp smell pressed in around him, a mix of mold and something older, something sweet and rotting. The moonlight filtered in through a hole in the roof, casting pale shapes on the warped floorboards. Then, crash! Something fell, heavy, close. Thomas dropped flat to the floor and scrambled behind the crooked door, curling into a tight, quivering ball. The door barely shielded him, swinging slightly with each breath of wind. He pressed himself into the shadow it cast, his tail wrapped around his paws. And then, silence, too silent. His heart thudded against his ribs like a tiny drum, and his breath came quick and shallow. He didn't move, didn't blink, didn't dare. The scratching had stopped, but something else had begun. Shadows were shifting on the walls, and not in any way he liked. The moon broke free from the clouds, casting silver light across the wreckage, and with it the shadows came alive. They stretched like tendrils, twisting across the walls, slithering up the ceiling, merging and separating again, as if they had minds of their own. Thomas watched from behind the door, every muscle locked in place. He told himself it was just the moon and drifting clouds, a trick of light and dust and wind. But something wasn't right. The shadows weren't behaving. They didn't just stretch. They reached. They moved not with the rhythm of the wind, but with intent, with purpose. One twisted across the broken floorboards toward him, too smoothly, too slowly. Then eyes, amber, glowing, unblinking, fixed on him, and below them, teeth, glimmering in the moonlight, sharp, still, waiting. Thomas didn't wait. He launched from the door like a missile, claws skittering on the floor, and flew through the open frame where the front door had once stood. His paws hit pavement and didn't stop. He tore through the ruins of the street like a shadow himself, not daring to look back, not until he reached the old oak tree. It stood at the very end of the street, roots gnarled like claws, trunk hollowed with age. Without hesitation he dove inside, heart thundering, fur bristling. He pressed himself into the wood and didn't move. The amber eyes did not follow, but even in the safety of the hollow, they burned behind his eyelids. For days afterward he watched the house from a safe distance. Nothing stirred. No glowing eyes, no unnatural movement. The door still hung as it had. The shadows lay still. Thomas began to doubt himself. Maybe it had all been a dream, a nightmare born of hunger and fear and the wild games shadows like to play in a cat's imagination. But he couldn't let it go. Whatever had been in that house, real or not, it was still his street, and he had to know. So, on a clear night, windy, moonlight bright, he returned. He crept across the street, slower this time, ears sharp, whiskers twitching. He stepped through the doorway again. The scent of rot hadn't faded. The air was cold, heavier than it should be. He padded through the ruins of the hall and into the big room at the front. A jagged window frame gaped open beside him, the glass long gone. A second escape route if needed. His eyes scanned the walls. That's when it came. The shadow. It appeared across the opposite wall, vast, looming, larger than him, and moving. The moon dipped behind the clouds. Everything went black. Thomas froze, too afraid to move, breath held, muscles taut. In the darkness, the house exhaled, a deep creak like bones shifting. The clouds drifted and the moonlight returned, and with it the shadows danced again, twisting unnaturally as before. Bang! A door slammed. From inside the house, inside the room. Thomas's eyes shot to the corner. Movement. It was growing larger, closer. He prepared to bolt, heart in his throat, claws digging into the floor. Then a voice, soft, high, gentle. "Don't mind her," it said. "She's my shadow. She goes everywhere with me." Out of the gloom stepped a small gray kitten. Barely more than fluff, eyes round and honest, her fur like soft ash brushed with soot. She sat neatly in the patch of moonlight, her own shadow stretching behind her like an old friend. "My name is Tabitha," she said. "Pleased to meet you." Thomas stared, still trembling. The amber eyes, the teeth, they had been hers. Or rather, hers and something else. Something that followed. The shadow sat beside her now. She was purring softly, her amber eyes warm as they met his. What had he been so afraid of? This little kitten, curled in the moonlight, purring like a heartbeat, was no threat at all.
This was Scaredy Cat, the cat that was scared of his own shadow, written by Barrel Coops.
I hope you enjoyed my short story. Please hit the subscribe button so you don't miss the next one. I am hoping to release a new one every week to 10 days. Everything from spy, stories, mystery, thriller, humor, futuristic, fantasy, period drama, and romance. Something for everyone. If you enjoyed this story, please give it a thumbs up. It helps others find my channel.